Force versus violence. We need to understand that these concepts are complete opposites of each other. They are not the same. The terms should never be used interchangeably with each other, because not only are they not even remotely similar, they're direct, diametrically opposed opposites. Let's look at the difference. They're often spoken about as if they're the same, and they're used interchangeably, when in fact they are actually diametrically opposed to each other. Force, the definition of force, is the capacity to do work or cause physical change in the physical world. Okay? For any change to be created in the physical world in any capacity, force must be used and applied. There's nothing you can do that doesn't require force if you're going to make a change happen in the physical. Okay? So, to set up this equipment, force was required. We had to lift it, we had to set it up, we had to plug in the cables. Force is required to do all those things. It's the capacity to perform physical activity, physical work. Okay? Action, force is actually action which is in harmony with morality and natural law, because the taking of it, the usage of it, doesn't violate rights of other people. So as soon as you're stepping over the line into coercive usage of force, that becomes violence. The initiation of force for coercive reasons, for coercive applications, becomes violence. That's what makes it violence. Force itself is not violence. As such, force is action which one always possesses the natural right to take, and this includes the defense, the physical defense of someone's person, their body, against the act of violence. Force may be applied in that situation. When you are accosted with violence, you do reserve the right to use physical force defensively against such an assault. Violence, on the other hand, and this is the key to keep in mind with violence, it is the immoral initiation of physical power to coerce, compel, or restrain unrightfully. No one has the right to ever enact violence, because violence is always starting it. Initiation, that's the key word there. It's the immoral, the unrightful initiation. So, teachers in schools will, if there's a skirmish that happens between a couple of male students one day, they'll say, it doesn't matter who started it. All that matters is who started it. All that matters is who started it. All that matters. Because the person who actually conducted violence is the person who struck first. They initiated the immoral use of physical behavior, of physical force, physical power to coerce, compel, or restrain. Therefore, when the person beats back that physical assault with force, they have not committed an additional wrongdoing. Okay? It's difficult for many people to understand who are in right brain imbalance. They don't want to acknowledge that you maintain the natural right to use force when you are accosted with violent behavior. If someone just came up to me on the street and started swinging, okay, because they want something I have, or just because they don't like the look of me for whatever reason, they don't have the right to do that. If I replied by beating back their attack with sufficient force to put that action down, how many wrongdoings would have been committed? One. Correct. One. Not two. One. Because I maintain the right to defend myself with physical power, with physical force when necessary, when violence, meaning someone else started the immoral behavior. That's what matters, the initiation. Who started it is all that matters. All that matters. And again, it's a very difficult thing for the ego to comprehend. The ego doesn't want to hear that. It's been conditioned so long that responding with force is also violence. We are verbally and mentally equating these two things, and when in fact they are actual complete opposites. Okay, if a kid got hit by somebody else in a school, and then that other kid maybe even said once, stop what you're doing, and then when the other kid wouldn't stop, he punched him and knocked him out. Okay, I would ask other people, who struck first? And if the kid lying on the floor struck first, I'd say you got what you deserved. That's it. Because that person had a right to defend themselves. You had no right to strike him. You initiated the violence. He responded with defensive force. Many people don't want to hear that because they're very conditioned. And I'm not saying you have to do that. You also reserve the right not to do that. But the right does exist. Both rights exist. You would have the right to not respond with physical force, but you would have the right to respond with physical force. See, that's a free will decision that the person has the right to choose between those actions. I don't even look at either one of them as the high road. You know? Personally, I think if somebody keeps beating somebody and keeps conducting violence to them, and the other person keeps accepting it and never rebels against it and never uses any force to put it down, I almost look at that as the low road. I'm not a pacifist. Not a pacifist. Okay? I am 100% about non-violence, meaning don't initiate harm to other people. Don't start it. Don't start none, won't be none. In street lingo. That's how it really is. Okay? But if somebody else starts it, they're asking to be put down with the amount of physical force that is required to put down the act of aggression. Violence is coercive action. See, that's the key. It's always coercion. Saying, you're going to do what I want you to do, or then I'm going to strike. Then I'm going to commit the act of violence. It's coercive. It's action which is always in opposition to morality and natural law for the very reason that it involves the violation of others' rights. That's why it's called violence. It's a violation. The act of violation it resulted in violence. Your rights have been violated. That's why it's called violence. It's the same root word. Violence is action which one never possesses the right to take, ever. There is no such thing as the right to commit violence. Doesn't exist. Because violence is the immoral initiation of physical power to compel, coerce, restrain, which no one has the right to do. No, you don't have the right, no one does have the right to initiate that type of action. Force, on the other hand, there is a time and a place to exert that force in a defensive capacity. All right, so we'll talk about that here. This piece of trash comes up to somebody on the street and says, give me everything that's valuable. I want your shoes. Oh, they're leather? Take them off. Take the wallet out, all the jewelry. Give me your purse. Give me your wallet. Okay? It's called a thug. Nobody would believe he has the authority or the right to do that, and we would have the moral obligation to obey this criminal. You know, if the criminal started calling himself government, we might start believing in it. Right? But let's say somebody on the street saw what was being done, took out their own 9mm and blew this guy away. How many acts of violence were committed? One.
They would look at it like that.
But what I understand. But again, that's somebody saying, I prefer not to see it that way. Well, again, perception and reality do not really align in many cases. They're not the same. That person is incorrectly perceiving what is. They're not seeing the truth. And many people don't want to hear that that's the truth because they're very conditioned and they are very well-behaved slaves. You know, as harsh as that is to say. They don't want to understand that the inherent right to use force against violence exists and is always our right. Always. Now, I'm not telling you go out and immediately do that either because the perception is so screwed up in the body of humanity that the majority of people don't believe that would be a right. And they'll persecute you for doing it. You see, the self-defense principle is continuously being eroded. Human beings possess the natural right to defend themselves from violence with defensive physical force. A person who is accosted by violence possesses the right to stop the person who is conducting the violence from continuing to do harm to them with any amount of force that is necessary to stop the attack or the assault, okay, up to and including deadly force. I would say, if you want to be nice about it, give the person one verbal warning to stop. Say no once. After that, it's on. That's it. And that's really my policy. Okay? That would be my policy on the street with an individual. The problem is here, the so-called authorities of the government, like you say, don't want to see it that way, and they're constantly trying to take this right away from somebody. They're constantly trying to say, no, we own the monopoly on the usage of force, and all you may do is wait and be accosted and assaulted until one of us shows up. Well, you know what that's called? It's called a big crock of bullshit, is what that's called. And it shouldn't be accepted by anyone who has any common sense. Shouldn't be accepted by anyone. Unfortunately, again, like I said, people are very, very well conditioned. And they think that this is an example of two wrongs don't make a right. There's no two wrongs committed there. There's one wrong committed, and then there's a right that is being exercised. Big difference between exercising a right that involves the defensive use of force and committing a wrongdoing which involves the initiation of violence. And people got to get clear on this. They have to get clear on it. So the question becomes, does violence magically become a right when it's conducted by government? When they shut down people's free speech rights and assembly rights? Or when they conduct direct theft from people through what's this euphemized form of slavery called taxation? And like I said, I'm not asking you to accept or believe taxation is slavery. I'm telling you, if you don't understand that, you're wrong. I don't care what you think. I'm telling you it is that way in truth and in reality. Taxation, slavery. Shutting down of people's rights is slavery. Telling people what they may or may not put in their body is slavery. It's not my perception. That's what is. Okay? And that's what we're accepting as a people. We're accepting that. These people have no more right to do it than any other individual would. And this concept brings us to the way I try to define and explain to people what real spiritual enlightenment is. Because what the New Age community is telling you that an enlightened being looks like is equally as a big crock of bull of what people who don't understand self-defense, the self-defense principle, believe. Okay? Enlightenment is not what this New Age nonsense community is trying to tell people that it is. All right? It's not about not taking action and sitting under a tree and meditating until you're magically enlightened. Okay? Enlightenment means knowing what's going on around you. Enlightenment means knowing what's going on within you. Enlightenment means truly knowing the true objective difference between right and wrong and living that in your life on a daily basis. Enlightenment means not aggressing upon your fellow human beings, but not agreeing voluntarily to be aggressed upon by them either. Okay? There's two pillars, two dynamics that go hand in hand with real enlightenment. I call this the two pillars of enlightenment. Okay? So here they are. The first pillar is the sacred feminine principle. This has been called the non-aggression principle. All right? It is the simple law of don't engage in violence. Or, quite simply put, don't steal. Don't steal. We talked about that. That's what all spiritual law can be boiled down to. Don't steal from other people. Don't take what isn't yours. Don't take life that isn't yours. Don't take property that isn't yours. Don't take rights that aren't yours. They're the property of others. Respect their ownership. Okay? Most people can grasp this pretty readily. Okay? And even in the New Age movement, they grasp this. In other words, don't immorally initiate non-rightful use of physical power to coerce, constrain, or compel the rightful physical behavior or free will choice of another sentient being. Respect other people's free will, their rights, their property, their life, period. Real simple. It's the golden rule. Don't do things to other people that you don't want done to you. I always state it in the apophatic, in the negative. It's much more powerful that way. But there is a second principle, a second pillar or tenet of enlightenment, if you will. This is the sacred masculine principle. This is what religions of the world, whether they be government, organized religion of different regions of the world and cultures, the New Age movement, all right? This is what they want, they are seeking to suppress. Because religions are right brain modalities. They're right brain methods of mind control. Just like government, who thinks it's a monopoly on the physical use of force, that's a left brain imbalanced mindset. All right? The second pillar of enlightenment is the sacred masculine principle, which is also known as the self-defense principle. Your body's your property. You have a right to defend it when it comes under attack by violence. This principle states sentient beings have the inherent right to use force to defend themselves from violence conducted upon them by another. This is the part many people don't get. You know, that's why we're not rebelling against our slave keepers, our slave masters who are masters of other people in their own sick, distorted, psychopathic minds and are nothing but thugs and criminals that people magically believe have the moral authority to continue to do what they're doing just because they euphemize slavery and call it government now. That's the sacred masculine principle. There is no such thing as an enlightened being that doesn't fully grasp both of these principles anywhere. Never has been. There's no such thing as half measures. You got to get them fully, both, or you're not there. And that's the problem. We're not all the way there. If people were already there, they wouldn't be tolerating what we're putting up with. More aggression against people's rights is being conducted in this country than when the founders of this nation actually separated from England. And they would have been horrified. I tell people, look, not to get nasty, but I tell people, if the founders of this country could magically come back to life somehow and see what's going on in this country, they'd take a piss on people. That's what they would do. That's how much disrespect they would have for what we're putting up with. You know? Again, just to say it the way it really is. That's what they would want to do to us. Because they would tell us, we warn you about all this. We warn you about it all. And you know what you did? You ignored it. Ignored it. So what did all those people who died in that revolution die for? We have to understand true ownership. Real, deeply. Not peripherally. Super deeply. We got to know what we own and what we don't own. We have to understand, why is this our current condition? That's the question we asked at the beginning. And here's the reason. The reason our species continues to experience a systematic and growing loss of freedom is because we collectively do not deeply understand ownership and we continue to commit and condone theft. This is a prison for thieves. That's what Earth is. It's a prison for people that don't want to respect ownership. They want to take things that aren't theirs. And that's what we're here to learn. We're here to learn that there's only one natural law. Stop stealing from other people. Stop taking things that you don't own. Stop condoning theft of things that other people don't own. Don't condone that activity, that behavior either. So what is ownership? What's the definition? What does it entail? To own a thing means that regarding that thing, an individual maintains three basic things regarding it. The first is rightful possession. It means you acquired it without doing harm to somebody else. So you rightfully own it, lawfully own it. Okay? You're in possession of it. You have it in your possession. It is yours. The second thing is you control its usage. Okay? So your house, you control its usage. Your car, you control its usage. Your clothes, you control their usage. My computer is mine. I control its usage. I'm using it. Okay? Control of the usage of something means that you own it. And most of all, maintaining personal responsibility for that possession is the third aspect of ownership. So to own something means I'm in lawful, rightful possession of it. I control the usage of that thing, and I maintain personal responsibility for it. All right? And this is what we have to understand. Natural law can be essentially reduced to one single spiritual law. I gave you the working definition, the soundbite definition before. Here's the super simplified two-word concrescence of all of this information. Natural law gets boiled down to two words. Don't steal. That's it. You want the key out of the prison? You got to understand property. You got to understand all rights are property rights. Stop taking the property of other beings. Stop condoning the taking of the property of other beings. The end.